Cato, and I totally got the giggles back there. I started laughing so hard. It just struck me as just that my work is far more humorous than I thought. You know, like when you're banging something with a hammer, and wiring and doing all that kind of stuff, it just seems so serious. And then I look at it now, and it's really kind of crazy. So I really thank you for this opportunity. I really am enjoying myself immensely tonight.
I agree. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Audrey Gottlieb. I came down from Maine, and I've met so many of the other artists on Zoom, but not in person. It's my first time meeting Katha, and I remember seeing the image before the video was made, and we had such a good time trying to persuade you that you're an artist. And so thank you for including me. I'm just really happy to be here to see old friends and new faces. Great job.
Hi, Michelle Chaikin. It's just been great to be a part of this, obviously seeing it in the big screen, but also seeing everyone else's work, because as a photographer, I just work so much alone, and within, traveling alone to take pictures and stuff, and then being a part of this exhibit reminds me of all the other artists interested in the same themes and exploring those themes in different ways. So it's been really nice to see everyone else's work, and then again meet everyone as well.
I'm Robert Lowe, and I really enjoyed being a part of this. Really enjoyed being a part of this wonderful exhibit, and to be in the context of these wonderful artists. And I thought it was so interesting to see the two sections together as one complete work. It just made a lot of sense and had a wonderful continuity. And in terms of my own work, it was wonderful to go through thousands of pictures and pick the ones that could fit into this theme. And then to see how Natalia had put them together was really exciting for me to see them up there. So, and it's different seeing them on a computer than seeing them up on the screen. It's kind of great.
Hello, I'm Ann Kafta. I agree. It is very different seeing the work up on the screen. I think there are so many threads that I could see where I could understand now why you picked different artists. There was like just a real connection between some of the work, and sometimes you saw that in the colors, sometimes it was the patterns. So it's just, it really is incredible to see it all come together as you envisioned it.
Thank you. It was great to see work in so many different medias that had this theme. It was just so fun.
Hi, I'm Mary Pinto, and I also am so happy to be here and to see everyone's work on the big screen. It is very different to see it on the big screen, although I've seen it several times on the computer. And I'm just so impressed by what the cell phone video footage can do, and how large it can go, and how good it can look. So it was very exciting for me to see the little videos I had taken from the 7 train just on my cell phone, and then also to see my tiny 8 by 6 inch collages, huge. So it was a little disconcerting, but everyone's work looked great, and I really enjoyed the sequencing and the all the, as Anne was saying, all the elements that really came to life by seeing everyone's work next to each other. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Hi, my name's Mishka Driscozy. I was the first piece. I'm a photographer. I'm also a filmmaker and an editor, so I greatly sympathize with listening to people's voices over and over again, which of course means that as an editor, I absolutely hate hearing my own voice. It's like excruciating to have to edit like your own interviews.
It's definitely the weirdest
It's super weird
thing ever.
but yeah, it was really cool to see it on the screen, on the big screen. I realized, wow, there's so much detail in these photos, and it actually inspires me to want to do like more films on my own work. And yeah, like others have said, I was just really struck by how everybody treated the urban space in a different way. It was really interesting to see everybody's, unique take on it. I love a lot of your guys' work. I was really inspired, and I'm just thankful that you guys all participated. And also huge thanks to Nancy for, one, having the idea, two, pushing everything forward. I know how much work it takes to put on these shows, to do the promo, to organize everything. So I've just been impressed by your, nonstop efforts to get this out there. And, without that leader at the head, none of this happens in a way. So thank you.
And those last minute calls, we need more images, we need more images.
Yes, I know.
Thank you.
It can be annoying. Everyone's frustrated in the moment, but when it all comes together at the end, it's really cool to see. So
Thank you.
thank you to everyone.
I don't know if this is this working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I really enjoyed seeing all the different ways that people took care of and painted the construction and the buildings, old buildings, new buildings, took them apart, all kinds of pieces, put them back together in all kinds of ways. I was just painting old buildings because I liked them, and then I switched over to painting new buildings because I live across the East River from the United Nations, and all the buildings are new around me now, so I paint new buildings, and that's fascinating too. So thank you
You're welcome.
for your opportunity.
So I have one other question, not everyone has to answer, but before we open it up to the audience, I was just curious, did you ever imagine you would make artwork about buildings and construction? Whoever wants to answer that. Okay, moving along. Does anyone have any questions for any of the artists? Or I could give you an answer.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd say definitely. I mean, I did photography since high school, and I don't know, I was always obsessed with like structures and buildings, and I think the difference is as I've gotten older, I've become more aware of the context of the work, and so things like history become more important in the story and the kind of meaning behind stuff, as opposed to just being interested in solely the like visual phenomenon of the buildings, if that makes sense.
I didn't really realize that kind of, that I was working on something around building, but as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I was raised on a ranch in a very rural area at the end of a dirt road, and my dad could fix anything. And he had just like boxes of really well organized junk. And he could fix anything in the middle of the night, and it looked a lot like what I do. And I think about that now, that's where it came back. I mean, he was building a fix in the middle of the night. I think of it now more, it's not so much art, but building. I'm building.
I think also, most of us live in the city, some of us have moved away, but you take it in whether you're riding the train or walking. As I walk to my art studio is about 2 miles from where I live, and I try my best to do that walk, and you're just taking in all of these structures, and I didn't set out to do buildings, but it just crept in. So it's not always the objective, but I think all of us who live in the city, it factors in our art in different ways, even if we're not actually creating buildings. But
Right. What I loved is each of the artists had a different perspective. Some of them shared a perspective of documentation, or the sense of loss of the old, or the exuberation of the new. It was the whole spectrum of experiencing a changing urban environment, from poetic to all sorts of aspects of it. And I just really think it's just so interesting. I really cannot wait to see it all in a room, in a gallery at some point, to see the threads. Like even watching it tonight, I was looking at John Elliott's work and seeing how it related to someone else's, and I'm like, I have to remember to hang those two together, and making those threads of connection. especially because the theme of gentrification is often met with a lot of anger. I love how Eleanor says, I've got nothing against glass buildings, you know, because, you know, it's new and they are what they are, you know, it's a sign of the times. Certain buildings that have come down, I really mourned, like that one building in LIC, Eleanor, near you, that had those towers. It was some sort of factory, and I was so hopeful that maybe it would be like the LIC version of Chelsea Market, but they didn't do that. It came down, and now, you know, it's Hunters Point Park South, where those other large, really large condos are. You look up and you can't even, it's really crazy. So I'd like to open up to the audience if anyone has any other questions. Fulvia, do you want a mic, or do you want to just stand up and?
Okay, beautiful work, everyone is excellent, I love to see everything, I really enjoy. But to me, one question, when I see every time a new building, I think is destruction of the nature, because before there were trees, there were animals running wild, and I think anytime I feel our planet is destroyed from this building. I don't see joy in the building. I see every time I feel grief because take away part of our planet, because the planet was all green, all beautiful with plant, tree, wild animals. Now that doesn't exist anymore. And when I see, for me, it's not a joy to see a skyscraper growing up. I feel, oh my God, I wish there were trees, there were land, there were something intact. Like everything shrink, we live in the cement, we live in the canyon of glasses.
That's a good point.
I feel it's something that we're losing forever.
Well, the good news is that they did build a park in Long Island City, and it's gorgeous, the Hunters Point Park South. But your point is well taken. Hopefully these buildings will have green roofs, and you know, that park in Hunters Point, they did take into account, where's Anne? The marshlands, there was special built procedures in place to prevent flooding and to make, and there was like lots of wild grasses and places for people to hang out. So, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. How many would like to live in one of those really tall buildings? Yeah, I know, but on the other hand, I live in a 4th floor walk-up where everything needs fixing all the time, and I'm like, oh, God, to have everything brand new, that would be amazing. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you. It's just, this is our life, our world. Wish I had something better to say about that, but. Does anyone else? Joe has a question.
Yeah, so what's striking is how much, almost without exception, there's no people here. A few of photographers captured people on the street or construction workers, but how much of the story is told construction, either looking at the buildings or patterns of the buildings, and you really get a sense of imagining what might be happening with people there as old buildings come down. Obviously, there are people moving into the new buildings, which is great in many ways. I was wondering if any of the artists had an idea of continuing this idea of under construction or the changing New York building or neighborhoods, but maybe incorporating a little bit more or weaving into some actual people stories, maybe capturing people along with buildings, or any other ideas that might flow out of this.
That's a great question.
I I think that could be part of the curatorial process. Not, no offense, but that was the point, was under construction, so I'm sure many of us do have the people, but we were more concentrating on architecture, taking it more literally. I know that in my large archive of work, I have a lot of people. I have, for example, before the city core was built here, I met a woman who owned the last house to come down, and I photographed her and her family and got to know a lot of the people in the neighborhood. I had a studio on 47th Road. So I think we probably do, point taken, but I
Yeah.
think we probably do have more.
Yeah, and
about-
Michelle also documented
Michelle?
Yeah,
neighborhoods.
for me, it was like an urgency of photographing the actual structures, because I knew that things were gonna change so drastically. So I really set out to photograph what I saw as the structures as they were back in the early 2000s. But I do also have people in my other images, and it's something that I wanted to explore more, but then the pandemic hit, so I didn't want like the masks, as part of that series. So that's just my.
Right, and I want to clarify, perhaps I didn't get it, I love the fact that the stories were told with just buildings. This is not a critique that where were the people?
No, I get it.
That was, that's fantastic, and I was just wondering if anybody, you Nancy as a curator, or anybody else had, and I'd like to take another step and maybe include people, but the stories told fantastically with just the buildings, yeah.
Thank you. I think for me, it was about, like, I just noticed people were noticing the world around them, and it was the exterior experience. But I do feel like, certain artists like Michelle, who talked about neighborhoods, that really you can envision these people and the various levels of wealth or lack thereof, and but that's a great segue.
Just another point of the buildings are, built by the rich, basically. I mean, it's the rich real estate businesses that are building the buildings, that are getting the money to come into the city, to build these big towers, and really know, whether it be here, whether it be the Bronx, whether it be other sections of the city, there's no input from the community as to what they want their neighborhoods to look like. So it's like this age-old conversation, starting with Jane Jacobs, of our neighborhoods and how they make the city versus the bigger banks, the bigger real estate agents, the government who puts these policies in place to build these buildings.
And to rezone these
And
areas.
rezone the areas, yeah.
I actually, during the pandemic, because this was underway, had participated in a Zoom info session on an exhibition at the Apex Arts Center about construction as well and gentrification. And the curator was speaking about the gentrification in Chinatown in New York City, and how the community organized a huge number, like they really got people together and actually fought off some buildings. And even in by Industry City, there was a large grassroots organization that's halted some major developments there. So, to quote one of my favorite artists, Patti Smith, people do have the power, but I always say, who has the, it's really hard to participate in activism when you have a roof to keep over your head. But, kudos to the folks that actually do and make changes that are for the people. Like in Sunnyside, there's a woman who is very active in the community against certain gentrification projects. So, you just have to stay aware of them and kind of, organize and sign petitions and all of that. But yeah.
I just wanted to answer or give you another point. Humans are decidedly absent, except for the girly picture, because we lose. We threw all that stuff away. We didn't try to do anything, so we don't. In my mind, we don't deserve to be in it because we threw it all away, and that stuff is what held the bed together for a long time. And there's no reference for the things around us in our world, and we just throw them away. When we're done, we throw them away. We click a mouse, and a new one shows up. So for me, they're decidedly absent.
That's true.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because I've struggled with this in some ways. It's like on the surface, architecture is quote unquote boring, you know. But when you sort of unpack it, it's like, you know, the buildings are obviously made by people. They're obviously inhabited by people. So on another level, they're like 100% about people. So that's sort of the struggle, is how to convey that. In my work, I tend to work with a lot of writing sometimes. So I'm almost certainly going to put this work in a book with poetry. I'm working with a historian who's working with the Gowanus Landmarking Coalition to try to landmark a lot of these buildings. But in all seriousness, your question actually pushes me to think like even more, like can I take portraits of some of the landmarking coalition, that kind of thing, because I do think that what may seem more obvious to me doesn't always necessarily translate, and there can be ways to like more emphasize the human story building connection. So thank you for that.
Thanks,
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, no, I was just gonna say that picking up on the human story idea, it seems as though several of the artists, you know, documented changes in their immediate neighborhood and talked about how it was going to affect their studio practice and having to move and things like that. I think that in a lot of ways the human story in this case, besides the stories told through architecture, were also just the artists themselves, you know,
Yes.
talking about what they saw, the changes they saw, how it affected them, their memories, you know. So I think people just like nature too, like Fulvia was asking, it's very implied, it's kind of around the edges, you know, but they're both there, and it is a, you know, interesting challenge to think about how to make it more explicit or, you know, interweave it more clearly. So it's a
And more
little
personally.
Yeah.
Like I love John's explanation of his abstract paintings. I mean, that was just so moving, really, really awesome.
Thank you.
Audrey, were you
Oh,
gonna say
no, I
something?
was just gonna make a quick comment
Yeah.
about Amazon.
Fashion.
So I think people took the power into
Okay.
their own hands here in Long Island City.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely, that's, yep. Anyone else have a question, comment? Jerry?
Yeah, well, you've sort of been addressing this in a way, but, and particularly Nancy, your reference to the gentleman there,
John?
he talked about memory.
Yeah.
I've reached that stage in my life where I'm reflecting a lot on what I've done and what I've lived through and stuff like that. And I was wondering how you think that your work in this particular area taught you something about yourself. There's I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's this old quote by Camus. He said that a person's work is nothing but this long, slow trek to rediscover through the detours of art those 2 or 3 great and simple images in whose presence his heart first opened. And I've done a lot of writing during the course of my life, and in looking back, I've become sort of fascinated with things that I included in the work that I had written that I just hadn't recognized as meaningful at that time. And so I become very aware of, when I look at something like this, well, I wonder what you've learned about yourself in looking at this. I mean, you immersed yourself in buildings and their past, and the buildings and their destruction. what did that tell you about your reaction to that and how you dealt with it? What did you learn about yourself, if anything?
That's a great question, thank you.
I'm looking at everything going on in these, all the different artists' presentations, and including my own. I see it as like how all of these different patterns that people are painting, whether they're making it in cloth or they're making paintings or they're doing, I see these different patterns as all being sort of metaphors for either not only the people making them, but the city around. Say, you know, you have like you have some old brick buildings that are being destroyed and they're being replaced by glass towers. These are different patterns, and they represent different types of people in a way, and different. So it's hard to get my mind around where I'm going right now, but I've learned a lot about myself just through art in general, with these paintings and with everything I've made, because I think about the patterns that I'm creating and how that represents me and what I want to leave behind, and what sort of metaphors that I think are important. You know, I think that represents myself, and yeah. So I'm constantly learning new things about myself, just through creating the different images and the variety of patterns that are, you know, they're in conflict with each other sometimes. You know, different patterns are destroying other patterns, and it's happening in real life, and it's happening in our minds. And so that's I don't know if that's an answer, but.
My heart is racing, so I'm pretty sure about what I'm about to say is true. This is a very new experience for myself. Audrey kind of alluded to it. I never considered myself as an artist. I've just been making this kind of stuff and quilting and stuff my whole life. And yes, as of right now, I understand that no matter how many times I've been shattered, and no matter how many times I've been broken, the pieces don't fly too far away that I can't hold on to them just for a second. And maybe I'm not ruined. I'm just reshaped, and I still have a hold of the essence, and it hasn't flown so far away that it doesn't still relate to who I am. And I want to thank you all for coming to my therapy session. Very instrumental in my growth, thank you.
Oh, Kathy, you're too hard an act to follow. I suppose I learned about history a little bit, and I'm glad that I documented what I did, when I did, because I'm in the process of registering now thousands of slides with the U.S. Copyright Office about Queens. So I have to think about it a little bit more.
So, you know, it's been an incredible journey for me of looking at the urban landscape for over 30 years. And during that time, I did change, you know, in the photography, because I started, I think, very formally, just looking at patterns and shapes and looking at things very abstractly. But somehow the human and the emotional has crept in over the years. And so it just kind of happened. So I think there was an evolution for me. And I noticed that the work was getting more personal and more psychological and less purely abstract. So there was growth there. So it's interesting.
You know, it's interesting. For so many years, I was always fitting in art. You know, I had a full-time job, and but I made time for the art and was making art. And one thing that the pandemic changed was I actually lost my job, and I suddenly had all this time for art. And I used to be sort of afraid, like I'm gonna hit a wall. I'm gonna get to a point where I don't have any more ideas. I'm not gonna have something, create and the thing is with this time, and with all of this, almost infinite amount of time, I have more ideas, and I'm thinking like, when am I gonna have time for that? I've got this series I'm working on, and so I think like one thing I've learned about myself is just that there's a lot more there, and I don't need to worry about that sort of fear. I don't need to have that fear of not having
Running out of
ideas. Yeah, sorry, not saying that.
Still got lots of ideas.
I do.
Good. I would say that my background is in photography, but I've sort of over the years gotten much more interested in things that are not really coming from a documentary tradition, even though they're still involved with photography. And this project really made me realize that that is where my roots are, and I've become much more interested again in the document. Although after seeing everybody's work here, it's also that the document itself has a very expanded definition, because everyone here is painting and quilting and doing approaching the subject matter from so many different directions. So it just brings me full circle again, sort of like, well, what is the document of the landscape or the experience. But in the way you traditionally understand photography or video footage, it's made me realize that things really are changing, and it's important to record what was there and what it looks like now. And I've become much more interested in that again, maybe because I'm getting older too, so it's a natural effect. But that's what I've gotten out of this project.
Yeah, I'd say from particularly the first Gowanus project that I did, I really learned I love working with the community and the power and the importance of community. I found that the people in my neighborhood were really into the project and really saw something in it in a way that I didn't expect. I was just used to kind of making work that is just almost in a void, or my own personal vision or whatever. And I mean, what can I say? You can't go wrong making a project about New York City. It's like people love their neighborhoods. They love living here. I love living here. I'm endlessly fascinated by walking around. So it's just really cool to see that response. I love working with collectors. It's amazing to feel like you're passing on this piece that's going to be loved and cared for, and kind of continue to inspire other people the way the original material inspired me. So I just really love working with the community and completing sort of all those circuits.
I don't have anything to add.
So I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank each of you for participating, all of the artists really, Violet Baxter, Katha Cato, Michelle Chaikin, Ann Kofta, Tori Cowles, who is not with us tonight, Mishka, John Elliott, Sharon Florin, who is also not with us, she's an amazing painter, and Audrey for coming down from Maine, thank you so much, Gwyneth Leach, Robert Loeb, Mary Pinto, Eleanor Schnur, Jim Seppens, and Fran Siegel from California. If anybody's interested in purchasing any artwork, you can speak with the artist later or contact me and I'll put you in touch with the artist. I just want to say I'm so proud of each of you for having the courage to take the artist path and for making the world more beautiful. I wish you all much well-deserved success, and thank you for being part of this creative journey. Thank you so much. Huge thank you to VG Hacker, the director of events here at the Museum of the Moving Image, for all his help coordinating this screening. Thank you, VG. And thank you all for your thoughtful questions, and for coming out tonight. Everyone is invited to come next door to Saks for a cocktail or a bite. We're getting 10% off thanks to Katha's connections there. So, thank you for coming. Good night.